Kav, it's nice to meet you,
Lovely to meet you, Steve.
even though it's through Zoom. Um, Before we talk about the upcoming release of Blitz Vega Northern Gentleman album, I wanted to ask you about your background a little bit because you have a really interesting background. Did you grow up in Leicester, England? Is that accurate on the Wikipedia? What was that
Yeah,
like?
that's um yeah, I mean it was sort of like I suppose it's a real standard sort of English city, really, town city. It didn't feel like a city back then, but and going down to London was always like, oh wow, the big lights of London when I was a kid. But Leicester was great for being a musician, really, because the scene was really small. It was really supportive as far as we had like two, and we only needed two like rehearsal studios in the city, and they were really full of all these bands, and it was just kind of yeah, it was a really great time to just kind of learn your trade, I guess, just because all you could focus on was playing, which is kind of that's all we did, that's it gave us something to do basically.
Were there other musicians that we may have heard of that came from that area?
Yeah, I mean, a lot later, obviously, there's like Band Kasabian who did really well. And then there's various musicians like John Deacon from Queen,
Oh,
people like that. So yeah, so there's loads of musicians who played in lots of different bands. Generally you'd find like Leicester musicians would move to London or move somewhere else and join a band somewhere else, kind of thing, because it didn't have that the same scene as like Liverpool or Manchester or somewhere like that. It was kind of a lot smaller, but and the opportunities weren't there as far as I don't think people took um, that city very seriously because it was just a small, just kind of considered to be a small city.
so when you were growing up, what kind of music did you listen to? What caught your ear as a teenager?
I mean, I was really into grunge. Was probably the stuff that I was, that really sort of got a hold of me. And my first band was like a garage band, and we would just play like Nirvana covers, and then Metallica covers. Basically, it was like Nirvana covers or Metallica covers. And we would just spend all night after school in that garage, just rehearsing those tunes again and again and again. And yeah, that was the stuff that really sort of, I suppose, helped me take that step into being a music fan, and then, or I suppose, becoming a musician and just going, this is what I want to do. But I just remember, I mean, one gig that really sort of made me decide that that's what I wanted to do was watching Guns N' Roses actually at the live from the Ritz, and it was on a TV show in England called Headbangers Ball. And I just remember seeing Izzy Stradlin play, and I just thought he was the coolest, you know, bloke on the planet.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I want to do what that guy's doing, because I always just wanted to kind of be a rhythm guitarist in a band, kind of just stand there, watch the show, and just play the chords, kind of thing, and come in and out with some riffs. I was like, yeah, that'll do me. That's what I'd love to do. And yeah, that was the stuff that really inspired me. And then, but before that, I was lucky enough. I had this. My aunt was a huge music fan, and I think she was traveling somewhere, and she basically left her vinyl collection at my parents' house. And there was basically Dylan, the Stones, Zeppelin, the Beatles. So when other kids were listening to whatever at 7 years old, I was listening to the Stones, I was listening to Sergeant Pepper, I was listening to Abbey Road, and yeah, I mean that stuff. I'd already decided at that point. I loved that. I was in love with music, So then I suppose the next thing was seeing Guns N' Roses at the Ritz, and then grunge happening, and then I suppose all the British bands started coming through, like Oasis, were the band that were big when I was at college, at school, and they kind of, I don't know, they were like the icing on the cake in a way to, right, this is
Yeah.
it. This is what I want to do.
It's funny hearing you first talk about all the American bands because for me, it was all English bands when I was a kid, growing up in Boston, and I mean, I'm wearing a Jeff Beck shirt today. I mean, I'm
Well,
still a fan of like the early
yeah.
English band. Queen's my favorite band. So when you said John Deacon
Oh wow.
came from your town, I was like, that's cool. That's real cool. Was that Nirvana cover band? Was that AKA Weave?
No, no. So that band we never played single gig because I was the only one in the band who wanted to go and play a show, and but the other guys were like, no, no, no. They didn't want to leave the garage. They just wanted to stay in there and just kind
So
of
it was a
play.
recording
Uh,
project. It was just a recording
well,
project.
no, no, we weren't even recorded. We were literally just a bunch of guys from school in a garage just playing music. That was it. It was as simple as that.
I don't know where I
So
heard
we
of.
didn't even know.
Yeah,
You
somehow
know,
I
but
heard about.
AKA we
Yeah,
no, AK Weave was my first. I suppose you could call it my first band that actually, signed a record deal and started, touring and stuff. And that was a band that I started when I was about 16, 17. And that was my first band traveling outside of my hometown and going to London and Ireland and places like that, and just getting out and yeah, taking it on the road. So that was my first band,
yeah. It's
proper band.
interesting. It's interesting because you've done a lot of club stuff too. You kind of mix two things together, and I heard about the Get Loaded club scene, and I guess you started that pretty much, right? Can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, basically, so after that band, aka Weave, I moved to London. I was kind of like in my early 20s, and I'd been running these club events around the UK where we were taking people from, our favorite bands to come and play their record collection. That was the idea, like DJ their record collection, and then we would play, which was kind of an idea to help us play to a larger audience. And
That's
because
cool.
it wasn't being done that much at the time, so it was quite fresh. So, a lot of people love the idea of going up and seeing, their favorite, rock stars or whatever, play their record collection, and they were all playing stuff on vinyl then as well. So it was kind of like really, really cool. So then when I moved to London, I tried to set the same kind of concepts up in London, and just met these guys at this dance club called Turnmills, and kind of proposed an idea to them, and they were like, yeah, let's do it. And we didn't really expect anything from it apart from it being just a really good party, a monthly party in London. But for some reason within a few months it just kind of exploded, and within like 6 months then we were going from doing this club which had started as 200 capacity, gone up to 1,000 people,
Wow.
um, and then we were asked to do like Clapham Common, put on a festival, and it was like 10,000 people, 20,000 people, and it just kept growing from there. So it was something that just happened, but it's always been a part of what I do. It's just something I don't really try to do or anything, but it just happens to follow me around, putting on parties and nights and stuff.
I know you've done that in LA too, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because Sean Ryder, you met Sean and you became like the guitar player in the reformed version of Happy Mondays, famous band from the 80s. Sean actually in interviews gives you a lot of credit for getting the band together. He said he was wanted to do maybe 6 months, but it ended up lasting a few years. Can you talk about meeting Sean and how that all came together?
Yeah, I met Sean again putting on a night. So we were putting on these events, and in Leicester, we put on this event in Leicester, and I booked him to DJ. So he came over and he DJed, and we just got on really well. Then he started touring with our band, aka Weave, at the time, and so he just come around with us everywhere. And to the point where we were driving in a small old transit van, and he would just get in the back and sit with us. He just loved it.
Wow.
He just loved being on the road with these young lads, and it was cool. And so yeah, he was great. He was just really, really good to us. And then when that band split up, I moved to London, started to get loaded nights. I got him to host the night. So he was the host, and he would invite all of his friends, whether it's Terry Hall from the Specials or, Tony Wilson from Factory Records, all of these guys, Peter Hook. He would invite all these people to come and guest at these parties. And then And then, yeah, it was really weird because at the time, because there weren't so many independent festivals in the UK, we'd taken on Clapham Common, and I was like ringing around all the agents trying to book like a headliner. I remember trying to book Primal Scream and just like bands of that sort of size. And the agents were like, no, they didn't want to upset, the other festivals by taking another show. Whereas now bands will play lots of
Yeah.
festivals, but back then they couldn't because it was a new thing. So, we were getting turned down, but we'd already taken Clapham Common on, and we knew we had to sell like 20,000 tickets. So me and my partner Danny, we invited Sean down for dinner, and we sat down with him and said, look, would you do a greatest hits set, of all of the Sean Ryder classics? And he was kind of like, no, fuck that. No, let's reform the Mondays, and you're playing guitar. And that's
Whoa.
basically how it went, exactly like that. Yeah, and so it was like a really, really just yeah, it just happened. I didn't really think about it. It just suddenly I went to a meeting and walked out of the meeting, and I was, and then again he was right. We thought it was only going to last for one gig or maybe even a few months, but then it lasted for me for 4 years. But
And I know you ended up making a record, and you co-wrote pretty much all the songs on the record, Uncle Dysfunctional. And you also played Coachella, and Tony Wilson introduced the band. How's that? That is so cool. It's like, let's turn the clock back like 20, 30 years, you know?
yeah, it was cool. It was the last time I think. Well, it's the last time I definitely saw Tony. He was sort of fighting his cancer at the time, and he he was just a really, really kind, supportive, soul really. And he was really good to me as well. And yeah, it was great to have him introduce the band that day, and also play Coachella, come to California, and do that. It was a huge moment for me personally anyway, to be able to be part of that.
Happy Mondays had a following here, but not a big one. And I think a lot of people found out about them from the 24-hour Power People documentary that came. Well, it wasn't really a documentary, it was a movie. And the guy that played Tony Wilson was very convincing. The Happy Mondays were projected as some pretty loony dudes in that. Is Sean like in he seems you know, in the kindest way, I'm asking this question, of course. He seems a little crazy.
Uh, uh, the kind of it was I guess, I mean, I remember him saying that he said like a lot of that stuff was exaggerated a bit, so maybe it was. But I was working with him when he was sort of well into his 40s, so I don't know. I mean, he was, yeah, yeah. I mean, put it this way: it was constant excitement being, on the road with that band. There was not a single day when you'd think, you weren't challenged in some way mentally. It was kind of like everything was, it was the exact. I suppose when I was a kid, and what I imagined being in a rock and roll band, like a proper rock and roll band, was kind of like that was it and more.
I love the way you answered my
So
question. When did you decide to move to LA? Had you moved to LA around that time yet, or was it later than that?
no, it was kind of. I never thought about leaving London. That's a mad thing. I always had this kind of, I suppose, thing about being in the States. I just, I always, just I was always drawn to, you know, I suppose California really interested me, and New York obviously. But when we played Coachella, I had like a week off, I think, something like that. And I'd met some really good people in LA, and they'd taken me around and showed me places, and just kind of showed me the scene here. And just generally as a musician, it just made sense for me. I just fell in love with the place on that trip, and it was like as if it was a feeling of coming home. It was really strange. I kind of felt so in tune with it. I don't know what it was. I didn't really know the city then, and as you well know, it takes a lot of time to get to know LA because it's not set up like any other city. It's just completely its own thing. But it kind of, I came back a few months later, and I wasn't playing with the Happy Mondays. I played my last gig with them in like September 2007, and within about 6 months, I was in LA after that. So I'd already decided after Coachella, at some point, whenever I have the opportunity, I'm coming and spending some time here. And then 2008, I spent a lot of time in LA, and then by like 2010, I was here all the
Been
time.
there for a
So
while. Been
yeah,
there. So,
yes.
so did you put out your solo EP, Blaggers and Liars? Did you make that in LA or did you make that in England?
I made that in England. That was the first thing I did after Happy Mondays. It was recorded in Old Street in London, so it was quite an edgy kind of record. It was quite intense, and that kind of captured that energy of the middle of England. Well, middle of Old Street, the industrial side of it. It was just when Shoreditch was getting cool, and it was kind of that. It just had that edge to it. It was a lot of rain, and then mixed it in LA, and then started working on the rest of the album in downtown LA, basically.
Whereabouts were you living when you got to LA? Were you in
Um,
downtown?
no. I first ended up. I think it's a rite of passage for any musician. I first ended up at the Oakwood in.
North Hollywood, right? Yeah, of
Yeah, yeah.
course.
So I ended up there first, and I was there for a while. And then after I got to know the city, a friend of mine said, he was like, you'd really love Los Feliz, And I was going over there. They used to have the farmers market on Hillhurst, and I always used to go for hikes up Griffith Park. LA was really good for me because I was escaping London and the chaos and the madness, and suddenly being in LA, I could suddenly I started getting a lot healthier, and seeing that there was more to life. And anyway, so I used to go over to Los Feliz a lot, and ended up first I moved to Hollywood on Argyle. I was living on Argyle for a while, and then after that, Sunset Junction, which is cool because it was just near my favorite bar, which is a place called El Chavo, which used to be, it's closed now, but it was a great Mexican bar, and then and restaurant, and then I moved up the hill to just off Hillhurst near the park, which is cool, and I was there right until well, pretty much halfway through the pandemic.
You launched a dance party, Dance in a Panic at the Regent Theater, which is a great place with the guys from Spaceland. So you had already had the reputation, and did those guys approach you and say, let's try and do something here? Or did you have that in your head that you were going to do this in LA as well?
Yeah, I kind of like we were playing a few gigs for place Spaceland, so we play a lot of they would book us for other venues, and I guess we just built a relationship with some of the guys there who were working there, and I suppose they wanted to get people from a certain background, authentic background, to do these kind of British nights and stuff. So we were just talking about it, and I was like, yeah, well, I was thinking about doing it anyway. So we kind of just partnered and put on these nights, and the idea was to have those kind of British legends, again, DJ play their record collection and stuff, and then have these great LA bands, perform, and because there was so many amazing bands around that it just made the nights really special.
I'm going to talk about Andy Rourke, who comes into your life. Can you talk about how you met Andy and how your relationship grew with him?
Yeah, I mean, so with Andy, it was I met him with my first band. We were touring, and we were playing in Manchester, and it would have been like early 2000s. And he came to the show. We had like lots of people in Manchester from New Order, Oasis, all these bands, Stone Roses and stuff. And Manny from the Stone Roses brought Andy down, and Andy was in the audience. And so after the show, I mean, we were kids, and he was just so kind. He came backstage. He like just just how, just the way he had this energy to him that was just, I don't know, so welcoming. The kind of person that in his company that you were comfortable. And he just had that vibe about him, and he just made us feel like really, I suppose, special, in a way. And he was just, he was just such a great guy. So we me and him stayed in touch, and then over the years, and then he would come down to Get Loaded and play the Get Loaded stuff. And then there was a possibility that he was actually going to be the bassist in Happy Mondays when I joined.
Oh, really?
But yeah, he was the one on the. We spoke about this not long before he passed, but he was on the list. He was. I think he was pretty. I think he was number one on the list, and then in the end we went. I think everybody was worried about rock star wages or something. So I remember. Which he laughed about a lot. He would be like, "What?" He's like, "You should have called me," but it was like they were like, "Yeah, it's better to get the kids in," So anyway, so he never knew about that, but yeah, so that was in 2004 or five or something, and then I bumped into him at Coachella Festival in 2007, and he was DJing, and we were playing, obviously. So we hung out after that gig, and he was always just really complimentary and stuff. And he said, if you ever fancy doing something, we should record some stuff together. And then again, as me and Andy are both like this, definitely, the years go by. We do stuff, but the years would just like, just drift past. And then suddenly it's 2016, and forward all those years, and I'm doing these Dance in the Panic parties, and he's coming over and hanging out in LA a lot. So I was like, "Oh, do you want to come to the studio, guest on a track?" And he was like, "Yeah." So he came down to the studio, and we were in this place in Silver Lake, and he just came down, played some bass down on this track called Lost and Found, and it
Yeah.
just felt really good. And after he did his bass take, he was like, we should just start a band. And I was like, "Yeah, cool, let's start a band." And so that's kind of how it happened. And then we just started recording, and we recorded, and we didn't have a band name. We didn't focus on anything apart from just enjoying making music again. And it was one of the most liberating experiences I've ever had in my life, working with him, working with this band. It was as if I've been searching for this ever since I picked up a guitar, and it was that moment in the studio of doing it where you just everything felt right,
That's
and you
fantastic.
kind of, yeah, you just look forward to those sessions.
I'm
Yeah,
curious, and I should have asked you
it
this
was it
before.
was great. So yeah, that's how we met, and that's how Blitz Vega started.
I'm curious, I should have asked you this before, but were you a fan
Sorry,
of the
Steve, is the Wi-Fi okay? Did you?
Yo, yeah, it's fine. Yeah. There might be a little delay or
Sorry, I've
something.
got a delay.
Can you hear me?
Okay, okay, cool. Sorry, I'm
Um,
outside. So.
oh, that's okay. I should
Yeah,
ask
I'm
you
good.
this.
I'm good. Yeah,
I
yeah,
should
all good. Cool.
I should have asked you before if you were a fan of the Smiths.
Yeah, so with the Smiths, I was so blown away by Johnny Marr, Andy Rourke, and Mike Joyce at first, because being a musician, I kind of, when I was into the Stone Roses, and then the Smiths were just a band that were played in every indie rock alternative disco that I would go to in my hometown. So, How Soon Is Now was the first song that, because obviously I was going back to discover the Smiths, and How Soon Is Now was just a song that became one of my favorite all-time songs pretty quickly as soon as I heard it, and it was a song that I played again and again in every DJ set. And then basically from then, again, the Smiths opened up. And then I basically found, as I got older, for some reason, maybe I was a little bit more mature with the way I listened to lyrics, then Morrissey's lyrics started really sort of connecting a lot more, with me. And then as a band, I sort of really, I had a lot of love and respect for them, especially obviously Johnny Marr as a guitarist. But I was always just, the weird thing was, I was so focused on Andy and Mike Joyce's kind of like connection and the rhythm section of the band, just the groove and the vibe and the way Andy played bass. And I hadn't seen a bassist like him, and I was just like, wow, this guy's like funky, but he's also kind of, he's also got that real sort of British rock and roll feel to him. You know, I mean, we always used to joke at the studio. We'd say like, you know, he'd just say, "Oh, Bill on bass," you know, as in Bill Wyman, you know. So it was kind of like he had that as well. He had that Stones thing to him, but he also had that kind of funk kind of vibe that I guess he got from, you know, being influenced by Japan and, you know, just lots of artists coming through in the late 70s and, you know, early 80s. But I mean, yeah, I became a big fan of the Smiths after that. And this is before we worked together. And then basically now, I mean, before we worked on Blitz Vega, I was just listening to, yeah, a lot of Smith stuff. And it was like I really sort of discovered them in a different way, I suppose, as I got older. With a lot of bands, I guess, you know, I've done that with, because you have your bands you grow up with, then you go back and sort of see how, you know, how amazing all of, you know, all those, um, yeah, all those artists are that you didn't see the first time around. I suppose that was the same with Happy Mondays as well. So
Did you mention Lost and Found? I wanted to ask you about the song Hey Christo, which is an interesting song. I understand that song's about UFOs.
oh, Hey Christo, yeah, Hey
Yeah.
Christo is yes. So yeah, we were actually in the studio and we were watching a documentary about a guy called Christo. I don't know if you've seen it. It's he was basically hunting UFOs in Northern California, and he was just an amazing sort of just just an amazing guy. You know, he just seemed like somebody. You know, he was wearing a Joy Division t-shirt, and he was kind of going around and just basically, you know, sitting in golf courses and stuff, and that was just, you know, it just kind of like, I don't know, I was just really sort of taken to him. I just found him just, I suppose, in, endearing. I don't know, there was something about him that just drew me to him, and I told Andy about it. Andy watched this documentary and he was like, wow. And you know, we just started kind of churning out this song in the studio, and we were in this studio in North Hollywood, and we basically, I think it was Elliott Smith's old studio, and they had like David Bowie's um old desk that they'd recorded Spiders from Mars on, and so we basically, yeah, just plugged in, we got this electronic kit out. It was like the Roland TDK whatever, I can't remember the actual model. It was like a, you know, really kind of industrial kind of electronic sound to it, but we captured the feel of the playing on it because it had that, you know, because you're actually playing the drums, and then basically got the beat down, and then just basically turned up, and we both recorded the bass and drums at the bass and guitar at the same time, and the song came together within like, you know, it was like 2 hours or something. We basically recorded the song. So
I saw the video of you guys at Abbey Road Studios. When did that happen? And also, this is a two-part question. Also, Johnny Marr, who you mentioned, plays, I believe, on the song Strong Forever. Did Andy bring him in? And was that also at Abbey Road?
no, so that wasn't at Abbey Road. Abbey Road happened in April 2019, and it was just after we started really, we kind of announced the band. So we've been working sort of, I suppose, behind the scenes, you know, just kind of in the studio, recording and developing in a way. We hadn't really put the full band together yet, and so we got the full band together. And we were over in the UK, and we wanted to really, one thing that we were really sort of enjoying was playing live together and capturing that energy. And something that was really important to both Andy and I was basically trying to capture that on record, you know, no matter what. And we would love listening to stuff, you know, I can't think of an example now, but just listening to stuff where you could hear the mistakes, where things weren't perfect, I guess a little bit punk rock, but not necessarily punk. You know, it was kind of like, we really just wanted to record, you know, a group of songs as they were, as we performed them. And so Studio 2 in Abbey Road, we got the opportunity of doing something there, and we'd started shooting a film a documentary in 2017, 18, about the forming of, Blitz Vega, the band, and just the journey and sort of Andy's journey and stuff. And so we thought, oh, it'd be great to record these scenes at Abbey Road where we're cutting to the live performances and stuff. And because it was a studio, we both wanted to always record in, and it was just especially Studio 2. So we did that. We recorded it all in one day. I think we recorded everything in 3 takes and just did three versions, and then basically recorded 5 songs live as they were, and then filmed it for the documentary, which is probably going to be released some point next year. But we also wanted to release that as a live recording as well. But we were really happy with it because it just captured everything we really wanted to capture, and it really felt good that day of recording, and Andy was really happy, and it was just it was something really special. But then about with the Johnny Marr thing, that happened in 2020. So I think I was back in the UK, and I think the pandemic had hit, so I was back in the UK, and Andy just paused me, and he was like, "Oh, Johnny said he'd play on the single," and that was it. It was just a really sort of, in a real sort of blasé way, he didn't really make a big deal of it, and he just sort of just called me and said that, can you send the parts over? I'll email you, and because we were in COVID anyway, it was kind of like, well, we can't go anywhere and stuff. So sending parts over was just the way we worked, and it was working well for us. So that's what we did. We just I sent over the files for the song, and then I think it happened pretty quickly. I remember it being like a few days later. We get these guitar parts, and it was pretty incredible. It was like it just yeah. My mind was pretty blown at that point to listen to it, because it's just a beautiful part.
Yeah, when you said it wasn't a big deal for Andy, I had a feeling it was a big deal for you.
Yeah, no, it was a big deal for Andy as well, but he was just really cool. He was really cool with it. The way he never really he never really showed too much excitement. It was just like, oh yeah, and I know how important it was for him, because there was he loved Johnny Marr so much. It was like his best friend, his school friend. They grew up together, went through obviously one of the greatest bands of all time together, and experienced so much. And he they had become really tight again, as far as I know. They were really close over the last few years, and having him play on Andy's band record, a song that he's wrote, and I think that really, really, really meant, well, it meant the world to him, because after we got the guitar parts, he was just like, wait till you hear this, kind of thing, and he was really, really excited, and he was like, it's brilliant, so and it was something that he felt a lot of pride in the fact that Johnny had done that for him, as well. And I think for us, just for me, as a guitarist, but also as a writer, as a songwriter, just seeing, I, I don't know what I expected, but it was everything you would want, but more, as well. Basically, it was beautiful. So I took everything down when I first listened to it. I basically muted every other part of the song and just listened to his guitar and Andy's bass, and it was pretty magical just listening to those guys play together. You know.
That pretty much is bringing us up to, no, excuse me, Northern Gentlemen. Um, you said in a quote, Blitz Vega is Andy Rourke, Andy Rourke is Blitz Vega. That quote's been popping up everywhere. Has it been hard for you to like continue forward, or is this like a tribute now? Did it turn into like a tribute situation for you in your mind as far as getting this record out?
I think that the easiest thing about this whole situation is that Andy had taken all the decisions away from me at that point, and He basically said to me a couple of weeks before he passed was basically to promise him that I would release the record and take it on the road. And obviously I remember the conversation and the day very clearly, and the way he sort of had to get through to me was a bit of an effort for him to do that at the time. He really had to, because I wasn't really there to accept the fact that he probably wasn't going to get through this, but I think he had accepted it to a certain extent at that point, and that's when he was like, I just want to make sure that the album's going to be released. So and I want you to take it on the road. So that's kind of all I've been focused on. So even after he passed, I was supposed to fly to New York to see him on the Sunday, and he passed on the Friday before.
Oh,
So I still got on the flight because I was kind of like, I don't know. I suppose I don't know. I just tried to carry on as normal and just sort of just get on with it. And so I just went and sat in a hotel in New York. I didn't really do anything and just kind of sat there. And then for 3 or 4 days, and then basically got on a flight to LA and just went to the studio, got his notes, and then started working on the changes, because I'd played him the album to a mixed level, to where we got it to in hospital, and he was listening to it actually on these headphones, put these headphones on his head, and he was listening to the album, and he was really happy with it. And then he had a couple of notes, and he was like, oh, it'd be great if this song's in this place, or just a couple of things. And so I went to the studio to with our co-producer Will Kennedy to work on it. But those 2 weeks, nothing got done. It was as if it was a bit of a blur. So it just didn't. It just because it was quite. It was strange because when you're separating parts, you know, you, especially with live musicians, you can feel that energy presence when you're separating the parts, especially. So when you're listening to the bass lines on their own, and everything comes back to that point, that day, that moment. And it just ended up not getting done at that point. So then I just decided to go home, take a few weeks, and then I just went back at it. And there was a couple of weird things that just happened, to get you in the right headspace. And I was in the right headspace, and then just went in and did it and finished it. And there was a couple of vocals that needed to just be kind of done. I changed the lyrics to one song, Lost Myself, which is our next single, because that song came about in 2019, and then we kept changing the verses, and then in the end I changed the verses and sort of wrote them about the time in 2023, from when Andy's illness had actually physically started to show, and flying back and forth from LA to see him, playing him the album, and kind of wrote those verses about what was happening, from my point of view at that point as well. So just kind of updated that, and then we mixed it. So then that process, it's not something that, I suppose, I have moments where I'm like, oh, are we doing the right thing? But then I just remember what he said,
what he told you. Yeah.
So so as long as I can do that and deliver that, then that whatever happens after that happens. But he just wanted people to listen to it. He was just really proud of it. He gave it everything. The guy was suffering, and he was going on a plane, after an operation in New York, and coming to LA and spending 3 or 4 days in the studio with his bass, full of life, full of excitement, full of joy. He didn't show it at all. He didn't let anybody feel sorry for him. He just loved making music in that studio, and we knew we couldn't play live shows. That's why the band only played one show in LA at House of Machines in July 2019. That's the only proper gig we did. Um, but we couldn't do shows. So every time we had a tour booked, it would come back and then we would have to pull out of the tour. But also he didn't want to tell anyone. So we would just be pulling out of tours without kind of
Oh, that must have
just,
been
yeah.
difficult.
He was really, it was difficult for him, but we just kind of just focused on, well, this is what we can do. We can go to the studio and we can just make music, and the rest of it isn't, we can't do any of that, but we can still make music, and that's it. So we just lost ourselves in the album completely, 100%, and that's all we did, making a record. And that's why I feel pretty happy about it, because I feel we gave it everything we had, and every emotion, every feeling, everything, every part of you was given to making that album. So yeah, we feel pretty. He was really, really happy with it, and yeah. So that,
You,
I know, long-winded answer,
it's
but it kind of.
okay.
I hope that.
Difficult question. Thanks for answering it. You have a new single and fantastic new single and video, Love City. The video is really, really good. The song's great, but don't get me wrong, the video is really good. I've watched it like 3 times. Can you talk about that a little bit and what the inspiration was from the song to and how you made the video and who made it for you?
Yeah, so we've got two guys who we work with. A guy called Martin J. Pickering, who's been shooting the documentary with us. He's followed us around for the last few years, and then we've got this great art director called Paul Mulvey. He's amazing, and then a couple of people at our label, and Graham and Gemma Woods, who are part of the label, and so everybody was kind of involved in that sort of process. We basically kind of, the song was actually about a few nights that we'd had in LA, really, at the early part of the band, and so I suppose we kind of wanted to capture that energy of that crazy time out there, but involving, like, seeing the excitement of cities like, in Asia, like Tokyo and stuff. But then you've got, this crazy uh, kind of coastal town called Margate in England as well, where we shot a lot of the footage, and we just got this girl and Ola Johnson, who's a lovely actress, who basically, just to go out and just walk around Margate and just just have a good time. And then Graham Wood, who's a rider on the bike, and who's actually my partner at the label, who loves his motorbikes, and we just kind of got him to ride around ride around Margate. And then the rest of it is basically from clips from our sessions in LA, from the documentary footage, and stuff at Sony TV studios, where we master all the stuff at a place called the Bakery, and from Will's studio at Sound City, Studio Deluxe, and just lots of different clips, just capturing that energy of our life at that point. It was like recording, night out, like just there was a lot of that energy, and Love City was kind of just, I don't know, a real high point, I suppose, of when you really feel satisfied from from your adventures, kind of thing.
There was one shot really early on in the video where it looked like you're standing on the Strand. Was that like in Venice that you took that shot?
Yeah, I have to ask Paul. I don't. It could be.
It
No, I
looked
don't
it,
think.
it was completely different than everything else. Everything else was really colorful, and this is more black and white. Look, it just caught
Oh
my
yeah,
attention. I thought it was
yeah,
Marina
yeah, yeah.
Del Rey. I thought it was
Oh,
Marina
it was
Del.
Marina Del Rey. It was Marina Del Rey. It
Okay,
was
I used
Marina
to
Del Rey.
live
Of
there.
course, it was.
Yeah, I
Right, right.
used to live there. That's why I recognized it. And I was like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
either
yeah, yeah,
Marina Del Rey or Venice. I couldn't
yeah.
figure out where you were.
Yeah, it
Like,
was definitely Marina Del Rey, because we were doing a lot. We were always in Marina Del Rey, and we were always walking around that point. And I remember we did quite a lot of interviews around there, and that's where a lot of the footage comes from.
I
So
used to live on the
I
I lived on the peninsula, so I'm familiar with that area.
I was actually walking around there the other day, actually, where we shot that part, the bit that you just said, and it was yeah, it all kind of came back to me, and I was like, wow, this is yeah, it was nice to go down there. Actually, it's a great spot.
You mentioned earlier Lost Myself's going to be the next single, and you also said something about touring. So before I let you go, I want to ask you about that. Is this a definite thing that you're going to do, is take this on the road and promote this record?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I promised Andy that I'd take it on the road, so I have to take it on the road. So yeah, it's something that we feel really good about. We played a couple of shows. We played one at the Scala in London in February, and we did like a sort of album playback party where we played like 3 or 4 songs live in King's Cross a few weeks ago, which is cool. And the band feels really good. There's a real focus and kind of energy to it, and I think we'll try to play as many shows as possible.
The States too, or England,
Yeah,
or
the States are definitely, yeah, definitely the States. So we're just working it out at the moment. I mean, we're going to be doing two shows. I think towards the end of February, early March in LA and New York. So we're just working that out at the moment. So we're doing like a show in LA. I think we might do the same in New York, but in LA we're doing a show where we're just inviting lots of guests and stuff, and more of a celebration of sort of Andy and what he meant to musicians, because there's so many musicians who, get in touch all the time and talk about what an impact he had on them and how they'd met him somewhere, or and what, just the same story as I told you when I met him when I was a kid. So there's a lot of bands out there who obviously rightly so respect him as a bassist, and
yeah, yeah.
I think and as a person, people who knew him. So we've been trying to do something special for him. We want to honor that. In LA, because LA was so good to us, and the band was born in LA. The recordings were all done in LA, and so we feel that this is kind of where and this is the only place where we played the only show. So it kind of feels right that we do a special show here, and then we'll probably do this same in New York as well.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I mean, I think it's a great record, the whole project and the idea of the tribute, and I love it, man. It's fantastic.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it, and thanks for your time.
All right.